Good morning. You're listening to AM Ocala Live on WOCA Ocala, 96.3 FM, 1370 AM, and streaming live, YouTube Live, WOCA The Source Radio. We got Galen on the phone. Good morning, Galen.
Hey, good morning, Adam. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
All right.
How about yourself?
Yeah, good. Tired. Again, allergies just fighting me this morning, but yeah, I'm ready.
It is a difference. I like I said yesterday, you sounded like you had a little pep in your step, and today it sounds like it's the other side of the spectrum.
That's all right. I'll fight through it. Fight through it.
Hey, well, I got you. I was talking this morning. Interesting ideas that are proposed here by Major League Baseball. Did you see this? They want to change the format for the playoffs. Amongst the current 5 teams that make it to the playoffs, they want to bring about 7 from each league with a 3-game Wildcard series.
It's terrible. It's terrible. First of all, one of the great things about baseball is one, you have 162 games, and that becomes the playoffs, right? So if you look at it, the last 40 games or so decide who's going to make the playoffs and who isn't. With this change, you become no different than the NBA, no different than the NHL, where over half the teams make it. So last year, and you would have had the Mets make it, and they went 79 and 83.
Yeah, they didn't win over 80.
You're a sub 500 team. You don't belong in the playoffs. So it's just to increase TV revenue because Major League Baseball is about to have to redo their TV deal, and I think it's going to go down a little bit. I think for the most part, ratings for baseball have gone up for those regional broadcasts, but they've gone down for the national broadcast. And that kind of makes sense. You know, baseball is very much a regional thing anyway. Mm-hmm. Most people only want to watch their teams because if they want to watch, for example, Mookie Betts or Mike Trout, and they want to see his highlights, they can just watch them online, in 30 seconds or so. So there's no reason for somebody to watch, for example, the Minnesota Twins play the Cleveland Indians.
Right.
Or the Rays play, I don't know, the Baltimore Orioles. God, that'd be a terrible game. So you look at that, and that's what this is. They're just trying to get a dance partner, for their major TV deal. That's all this is.
Now, do you think that there's, for example, right here it says, and this is one of the things that I started to think about as a lower payroll type ball club, the idea of Moneyball here. So it's an incentive to spend. In recent years, teams have pulled back from spending to build more of what they believe is more likely a playoff team. In short, they don't see the wisdom in spending on what is likely an 80-win team. But with 7 teams qualifying for the postseasons, the Red Sox would have been a playoff team last year with 84 wins, for instance, and more teams could likely spend thinking they're close to the playoffs, and you'd be spending money in adjustment to saying, hey, we have a chance at the playoffs even though we still have a lower payroll.
Yeah, all that's true. But again, all you're doing is raising the ceiling. So it's not going to stop the Yankees, and I'm not even going to put the Red Sox in that category right now because of the way they just did a huge salary dump with Mookie Betts. They might as well be a mid-market team now. But that's all it does. It just raise it. But mid-markets already go.
Yeah. Well, that's true. The variety of mid-markets go. So you'd almost have... but the baseball is the most even playing field there is. Yeah.
When you look at when you compare it to other sports, basketball is tough because it's so singularly player dominant. But they basically had the same 3 or 4 teams make the finals over the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. Major League Baseball has the biggest variety. I think baseball is an extremely healthy sport right now. and it's in a really good place. For the most part, regional TV ratings are up. This is Manfred just trying to shock the system. And he's trying to reach out to people and say, you know what, look, I'm not scared to make these radical changes.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to put in things like the pitch block. And so, yeah, that's all this is. And he's just trying to see if a media partner is interested in it. That's it.
Now,
that is it.
They say in the events, in hindsight here, sports fans increasingly respond to, quote, events more than a steady stream of content. The expanded playoff format creates up to 12 elimination games out of a maximum of 18. The postseason would kick off this postseason selection show, which would give more viewership, and partners would express interest in carrying. Some of the TV partners would carry. The event models also applies to regular seasons, where this was kind of interesting. So, for example, the Yankees and Dodgers would play each other every year, for instance, rather than every 4 or 5 years, which they currently do now. Then again, I've got my own opinions about the whole interleague stuff. How have you felt about the interleague play and the way they have it set up now? Because
I don't mind I don't mind interleague because, one, I love the unbalanced schedule. I love that teams have to win basically their division.
Yeah,
I think that's fantastic. I think that's the way baseball's supposed to be. Win your division, make the playoffs.
Yeah,
done.
You
have 162 games.
Yeah.
Why all of a sudden for the last 10 is something miraculous going to happen? And I think baseball is one of the few sports with the best team throughout the year tends to win. Now the wild card has changed that, right? Because the wild card has won several times because, in baseball you can become very, very streaky.
Yeah.
But if you're going to add all these innings to late the games, you're going to drag games out. The game's going to be incredibly long. It's going to become more and more about the bullpen, and it's brutal. Last year, the average games went way down. It's still the average game is still shorter than an NFL game.
Yeah,
I don't think people really comprehend that. But the average game, now the playoffs just get ridiculous. So there's nothing we're going to do about that just because of the nature of the game. And so by doing this, it will become longer still. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it would be no big deal to make the playoffs then. I think it's important when a team like Kansas City Royals a few years ago made that huge run, or even the Houston Astros, the way they've made the run over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It becomes a thing now. There's no reason to go out and get that trade deadline guy. You're like, we got enough to make the playoffs. Let's see what happens. Yeah. I don't like it. I don't like that many teams making the playoffs. That's where I come down on it.
Yes, seven teams in each league, so you're gonna have 14.
You keep seven. It's really 14, and the reason it's 14 because one of the proposals is there really won't be much of a National League and American League anymore. So I heard they even may just change that in the playoffs and reseed. And I'm like, that's okay. Well, every playoff they're going to reseed, so you wouldn't even know who you're playing.
Yeah.
And I don't like it, but we'll see. I do like the pitch clock because I've seen that work in minor leagues.
Yeah, I have too. And like you said, with it being long and drawn out, already baseball is a little long and drawn out, even though it is shorter than an NFL game, which is true, by the way, because a lot of people don't factor that in, considering that when you're in between 35 seconds for each play on the football field, my God, the commercials that break it up, you got a 4-hour game televised. But with baseball, you're 3.5 maximum unless it goes later. Sure. It's just because of what the game and the pace of the game in itself. But yeah, I don't know. And then, like you mentioned too, I've heard rumor of that where the idea would be just to, I guess, mesh all the ball clubs together as not being an American League or National League team. Because now with the idea, and this is one of the other proposals for those listening, is including a DH adopted idea for the National League teams, where basically you just have DH anyway. What do you think about that? Do you think it's time?
I'm a fan of the DH. I think in this age of specialized players, I'm torn on the whole specialized player thing. But when a pitcher just stands there and just does nothing but get in the way, when you look at the ratings for AL games are higher, and that people say, oh, that's market based. Well, that's not true. I'm a fan of the DH because it puts one more bat out there, and people are there to see excitement and runs, not some guy get lucky to foul off a pitch.
Right, just to keep the inning and the game going even longer, even though he's an out. You know darn well he's an out.
Correct.
And I never liked the idea that when you did have some runners in scoring position, it was like, well, call it. Pitch to him so he could try to bunt, or you're going to get him out. And, this changes that. And I like that idea, too. That's a good point. It puts the bat in the hand of a ball player who can swing it, and it does make it a little bit more exciting. And I think that does say something about what it could bring to the National League. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also puts a lot more emphasis on defense at that point.
Sure.
So, it means you can have a guy, for example, like Jackie Bradley Jr. for the Red Sox, who can't hit, but he's such a defensive plus. He's worth not having the bat in the American League. In the National League, he would really, really struggle because he's another guy that you have to pinch hit for. And, when you watch some of the defensive plays he makes, they're incredibly exciting. So we'll see. Manfred's got some work to do. I hope he makes the right decision. I still don't believe that Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he'll get in until after he's died, just because I believe he bet on baseball and he bet on his team to win, and I know for a fact he bet on his team to lose. Even if he didn't bet the day that they were playing there, that's a big signal to everyone saying they're going to lose.
Interesting.
We will see.
Interesting. I had another he's a Red Sox fan also, and in the argument of Pete Rose with the Hall of Fame, I guess his argument, and I want to know how you feel about it, his argument was, and it's a little tough here, so just bear with me, but the bottom line was, you got a guy that played well enough, put up enough statistics that in his career earned the conversation of being put in the Hall of Fame. He's not there because of gambling. And yet the argument is that Babe Ruth off the field was a womanizer, was a drunk, was all this other stuff, not in the limelight of the most upstanding citizen. And this is the guy's opinion. That how could you rule in the idea that Pete Rose doesn't deserve to be in there when it's based on simply baseball playing ability and not character person? And
that's really easy.
Yeah.
That's easy.
You think so? I
mean, Pete Rose bet on baseball.
Right,
he
the
bet
character
on
of
his
the
team
game.
To win as a manager, and he was a player manager. That's not character. He was in complete control over his team's ability in the outcome. Babe Ruth was the greatest baseball player of his generation.
Yeah.
He was head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yeah, and regardless of what he did off the field. Yeah.
You could make the argument that there are players in the Hall of Fame that use steroids. Okay, now we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
That there were other guys who cheated. I can completely have that conversation with you.
Right.
But to sit there and to say that Pete Rose didn't bet on baseball, Pete Rose even finally admitted he bet on baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Dowd report is very clear. And I interviewed Bart Giamatti, and Bart Giamatti said we basically came to an agreement that Pete Rose would take a lifetime ban and we wouldn't continue the investigation. Because I think that if they continued the investigation, they would have proven that he did bet against his team.
Ooh, interesting.
I mean, he ended up owing bookies. He owed one guy over $500,000. I mean, the Dowd. Read the Dowd report.
Interesting.
You read the Dowd report, and you don't think that he threw games. I think you're being really, really, really putting your head in the sand. So I just don't, and I don't think he's been that great of an ambassador for the game. I also think he's a bit of a compiler. I was never a fan of Charlie Hustle. So, but again, there are guys who are in the Hall of Fame and use steroids, and I'll look at one guy in particular, and that's Jeff Bagwell. So there's no doubt in my mind that he was a steroid.
Ooh, interesting call out on a player for that. Yeah, and that's one that's actually, it's funny you mentioned him. He was one that was sort of under the radar of all that, considering he wasn't 6'5", 225. But you're right. I always kind of wondered that too. Not to mention just how long he was playing baseball. But then some of the numbers he put up. Interesting, partner. Jeff Bagwell. Yeah. That's
but again, there's a lot of examples like that. I mean, there's all kinds of guys who are in Major League Baseball that are terrible people. The Georgia Peach, I forgot his name, Ty Cobb. It was a horrible human being by all accounts. Okay, so he's a heck of a baseball player.
Yeah, right.
And he didn't bet on his own game, and there's no evidence that he cheated. So let's move on.
Yeah, interesting.
I've heard that before, and every time I hear that whole thing with Babe Ruth, I just go, "You're an idiot." So get a better argument. And if you think that Pete Rose was a good person, just watch how he handles his signing. He won't even look at you unless you give him $50 to sign something. It's one of the most worthless autographs on planet Earth.
That's because he owes the bookie. He needs the money. We want to take time.
Oh no, they settled all that. That's a fact. So that's why he's still out there, and that's why he's broke.
We want to take this time with this segment to throw out to our sponsors, our good friends, Palm Garden Health and Rehabilitation Center, Palm Garden of Ocala, 2700 Southwest 34th Street. Proudly serving our community since 1987, delivering enhanced clinical services and initiative therapy and compassionate health care, whether you're in the need of a short or long-term care solution. Their goal is to accelerate your pathway to recovery with a compassionate environment. You can reach Palm Garden Health and Rehabilitation Center, 352-854-6262. And, of course, our friends at Penn Flooring, family-owned and operated, serving Marion County for well over 30-plus years. And we owe every bit of their success to their unrivaled customer service. They offer the full-service flooring company dedicated to finding the best solution for your flooring needs and having experience in both commercial and residential fields. Penn Flooring, 352-351-3420. Excellent. Galen, how is the blood supply? Did they get a good turnout yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday was better. We need to continue that. Just our usage our hospitals are just using a lot of blood right now. So please just get out there, give the Gift of Life, donate blood. We're right there on the boulevard at 1607 East Silver Springs Boulevard, and one donation saves 3 lives.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, where are you headed? Are you up to Gainesville today?
No, I'm heading south today.
Oh, gotcha. The weather's supposed to be very, very warm today, my friend. Very, very warm.
Love it.
It's going to feel sticky, humid. Yeah, that's what everybody's saying. They love it. Get it back up to 80. Feeling good.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yep. It's a little foggy out there this morning, but it's looking like it's starting to lift now. So the fog itself is now looking to just be a low layer of clouds, which is good. And then they're calling for the push of rain as increased cloudiness for the day tomorrow, with rain Thursday and Friday, which is needed. And why not? If we know that every week it's going to be around Thursday, Friday, this time of year, that's predictable. That's easy to do, and that's good. We'll be able to talk more about that when we have Carol Ann in here talking about that.
Scheduled rain.
That's right. But yeah, partner, the little change in Major League Baseball there that we were talking about, it's interesting. I think it's kind of good, just in a way, that there's some ideas out there. Maybe, if anything, that I guess you're looking to change certain things. That's a pretty big change. How did you feel when they brought on the wild card? Because that wasn't always there. Just even the one.
No, I always thought the wild card was fine.
Yeah,
and the reason is because of expansion.
Right. And
You know, when you look at when the pennant came up, there were still only 2 divisions, and
right.
it was incredibly difficult for some of these smaller markets to make the playoffs. And I think the wild card has been tremendous for baseball.
Yeah.
I don't believe because if you look at basketball, nobody pays attention to the NBA. Nobody until March, April.
Right.
Because the season is so long and it doesn't matter because everybody makes it. You have to be a pretty terrible basketball team to make it. And I think the same will happen in baseball.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm against it.
And with what we said about the NBA, it's like even if you're going to watch anything, you really only care about it till the fourth quarter. And it's almost as if college basketball is the green light for people to start paying attention to other basketball. Because now as we're finishing up February with a lot of these division games for college or conference games, that's going to bring up March Madness. So you're going to have your conference tournaments, and then you're going to have the big dance with the NCAA. And that's when people really start to pay attention to basketball in a whole anyway. So then after that, Christ, you still have another 3.5 weeks before April actually begins the NBA playoffs, which even the NBA playoffs to an instance, and this is what I was going to bring up about baseball later, but with the NBA playoffs where pretty much half the teams in each league or in each conference go, we now are playing basically NBA playoff basketball from April until June. So do you even see that with this change in Major League Baseball, do you see them actually legitimately playing every World Series now into the first week and a half of November?
No, and that's why they won't do it. What
Yeah.
they'll do is they'll shrink the number of regular season games in some way, and now you have a real problem. And you mentioned college basketball. College basketball is their ratings are dropping significantly over the last 20 years. College basketball is at an all-time low.
Why is that?
For ratings? It's pretty simple because of the way they do because of March Madness and because everybody's one and done. You don't get to really know who the player is on each team. And I think that's an issue. But at the same time, I don't think kids should be forced to do anything they don't want to. Once you're an adult, if you want to go straight to the NBA, go straight to the NBA.
Yeah.
But it's a real problem. It's college basketball is not where it was, again, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
In a whole, I've thought this a lot, and it's always arguable, but I almost feel, partner, that all sports right now, from Major League Basketball, or Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, NFL football, and even some of the college sports, they're not where they've been, it feels like, within the last 5-10 years. It's almost like what we've talked about, maybe something with money or the television or something, has changed it a little bit. Or maybe it just hit its pinnacle and now it's plateaued or something to that extent.
Yeah, sports is as we know it, it's now segmentized, right? So I think more and more sports are going to become more of a pay-per-view type feature. So
yeah.
That's what's happening. There are sports that are growing in popularity. Major League Baseball has actually went up last year on their TV rankings, both their regional and their network.
Yeah, hate to cut you off, buddy, but we're just about out of time.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yep.
Fox News. I'm
See you
Chris
later.
Foster. Voters in New Hampshire have their say today in the presidential primary campaign. President Trump says at a rally in Manchester,
Democrats are now the party of high taxes, high crime, open borders, late-term abortion, socialism, and blatant corruption.